Hey folks, so I've been pulling together some stuff to work on some terrariums and paludariums, and made a little trip out to the mountains to kind of kickstart my inspiration. I'm going to tell you all about it right after this. Hey YouTube, this is Pecktec. I hope this video finds you well. I've been making aquariums for a really long time, but I've always been sort of fascinated with terrariums and paludariums, and I'm starting to wonder what I was missing there. I kind of think it's time that I kind of stepped outside of the water and right to the riverbanks and kind of experiment with that part of nature too. You know, I'm mainly known for my aquarium videos. I've made a lot of aquariums over the years, but I've been kind of watching the terrarium scene for a while. In particular, Tanner from Serpa Design, I've always really admired his channel and the things that he does on there. And so I kind of started making notes. There's another channel too that's been deeply inspiring for me. It's Azu. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. His videos have zero dialogue, and sometimes it's just the music and sometimes it's just the sounds of him working. Really interesting, almost an ASMR take on the whole terrarium. He builds a lot of paludariums and really constructs things and kind of makes things really interesting landscapes and stuff. It's not really my goal to perfectly emulate either of these two people, but I've been watching their videos and kind of making some notes and gathering supplies. A lot of this stuff actually I had already, but there are a few things that I kind of pulled together here, and I thought it might be handy to kind of show you, because what I'd like to do is when I make this video, I'd like to just kind of start using all this material and then use this as a video to reference back to where it came from. A lot of this, I just kind of made notes as I watched a couple of videos, a couple of Tanner's videos especially. I made a few notes of all the materials that he was using, and I just made a shopping list and went to Home Depot and got most of this. A couple of things were easier to mail order than they were to shop for locally. And of course, I won't be needing all of these things for every project. And I think I'll eventually use a lot of this stuff. I'm going to start really small. I'm going to make a couple of really small things, and I'm going to build up to something bigger. My goal is to have a big paludarium or terrarium, or a larger one, by the end of the year. The larger one that I make, I'll probably make specifically towards a particular pet or something to keep in there. I'm really into the plants. I'm really into the plants and the small landscapes, almost more than I am into the animals that go into them. And because I'm starting small, you know, of course there won't really be things to put in there. But as I go bigger, you know, hopefully I'll be able to include some sort of creatures in them as well. I'm going to continue with aquarium projects too, so don't think I've switched the whole channel over to terrariums, although it kind of looks like it looking at this table full of crap. But it might be something where I kind of alternate, like I work on an aquarium and I work on a terrarium, and I kind of do both things. Just want to try new things. I want to keep expanding my knowledge of recreating nature in the home, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. All right, so first of all, I'm going to put a little list in the description. That's basically my Serpa shopping list, is what I'll call it. I got a lot of this from watching Tanner's videos and kind of making notes. And I'll quickly tell you about some of the things I've purchased, and then I'll tell you about some of the little projects I've already done to kind of help kickstart the process. There's a really wide variety of materials, and a lot of the things I bought, I had to buy like more than I definitely need for the couple of small projects I'm going to start at first. But most of the stuff I'm going to show you are things that I kept seeing over and over and over again, and I'm pretty sure will be useful right away if you're looking for a project like this. There are all kinds of different ways to purchase these things, whether you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or you buy it all online. Any of that is possible. All right, so let's start right here in the front. We have some great stuff. Great stuff is an expanding foam. You do need to be careful because this stuff will heat up as you use it. I've seen this used in a bunch of different ways, like to place rocks and wood and create false backgrounds and stuff like that. It can be a little bit unsightly. There's all kinds of, usually what I see done with this is that it's sprayed on, used to adhere the things together and kind of give them a nice stable backing, and then later on you go away and you cut away the puffy parts. There's also black versions of that. I found there's a black great stuff, and there's in the pond section of Lowe's you'll see what is this, foam sealant paracascata. This is kind of made for waterfalls and stuff to seal rocks. So instead of that kind of creamy great stuff color, there's this as an option if you'd like to do black. It might be a little easier to hide later on. A big part of this too is creating a tropical mix, and Serpa Design has his own kind of special recipe for this. Some stuff I picked up was this organic potting mix. This is a Miracle Grow all-purpose container mix. The last time I looked at stuff like this was when I did my dirted tank project, and I actually cannot find, like, I guess they've rebranded, which is really inconvenient, but they've rebranded the organic potting mix that they used to have, and this seemed really close. Hopefully this is good and it will work just fine. I think there are probably a lot of different options for this. You just want to make sure that it's organic. My understanding is that the organic products will work really well and be fine, and you can use this for dirted tanks or building your tropical mix, which I'll explain in a minute. But this is what I picked up. Something that goes with that is Orchid Bark. Wasn't too sure on this. This seems really chunky compared to what I saw in some of the videos. And of course, if you guys have any tips or suggestions, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. I'm not a pro when it comes to making these things. I welcome any advice that anyone has. I'm doing my best to learn very quickly how to do stuff like this, and kind of taking you along on my journey. All right, so this is Orchid Bark, and this is also a component of the tropical soil mix that I've made. Another component of the tropical soil mix is Sphagnum Moss, and this stuff is useful for a lot of different things, not just this tropical mix I'm talking about. I've seen this used to kind of help encase roots and things that are being placed in the backgrounds of terrariums. There's a lot of different uses for this. This is kind of a must-have, I think. I also got some Reindeer Moss. I've seen this used a couple of times, and it looks like it's very attractive moss covering. It looks nice. This may or may not be useful. It's just something else I picked up. It was right next to the Reindeer Moss. It's just called sheet moss, and another thing we can use. Something I saw a lot and used in a lot of different ways was this. It's a cocoa fiber. It comes in these bricks. It actually comes in a couple of different forms, but I've seen it in these bricks quite a lot. I had to find this online, and you can find it in a couple of different forms, either larger amounts than this or smaller amounts than this. This seems to be pretty compressed, and I think it will probably go quite a long ways. I've seen it used for a number of different elements, either adding, either filling in the gaps between rocks, making backgrounds, kind of hiding things and stuff like that. Tanner would take this stuff and put it over ropes and kind of make vines and stuff like that too. So I figured this would be super handy. I've seen it used in just lots and lots of different ways. So more on that later. I also got some coconut terrarium liner, and what this is are sheets of that coconut fiber, and these are used a lot in the reptile trade. I've seen this used in a bunch of different ways, usually to fill in kind of gaps in the background where there aren't rocks or wood or other things and stuff. So you don't have just like a glass background, you can fill it in with this. Or you can use it to kind of line structures that you build in there. We'll get into all that as we go. This is another thing to buy it in sheets like this. It doesn't even say, but you can buy this. I ended up buying this online. It was a lot easier to find than in the store. I'd really love to find a better source. When I've some of the videos I've seen, Tanner buys this, I think, in big, huge rolls. I've started off with a bunch of small projects, so I didn't go crazy either with the block of the coconut fiber. I just got kind of a smaller one, and this stuff. I think this will be more than enough to get me through my first couple of projects. Something else that's probably pretty essential is, and this is pretty cheap too. This is a roll of like nylon window mesh. This is like if you're going to make a screen door or you're going to make a window screen. You can use this stuff. It comes in you can't buy small amounts of it. It comes in a fairly big roll, but it really wasn't very expensive. And I have a feeling this roll is going to go a long, long way. We'll be using this for a lot of different things. Something else I got that I may or may not use, the other guy I mentioned, Azu, he makes a lot of stuff out of black foam. Like he buys black foam sheets and he actually constructs these really elaborate structures that he then attaches rocks to and works with that way. What this is corrugated plastic. So this is basically, if you've seen like a yard sale sign, you can buy that same material but in all black. So this is black all the way through. It's corrugated plastic, absolutely waterproof, and very rigid and strong. So I might try to build some similar structures that Azu does with this. Might eventually go to the foam. The foam is probably a lot easier to work with, but I've got some sheets of this just in case. Something else that's basically a building material that you can't buy a small amount of, unfortunately, but you probably can find in the garbage if you're looking very carefully, is this. And so what this is it's called egg crate light diffuser, and you can find it usually where the drop ceiling stuff is, or maybe in the lighting section of the hardware store. This was pretty easy to find once I told the fellow exactly what it's called. Egg crate light diffuser. Just remember that. It makes it a lot easier for them. This plastic stuff, it comes in squares and you can cut it and build it. This provides a nice rigid structure to build all kinds of different things. I've seen Tanner use it to kind of disperse the weight of rocks on the bottom of a terrarium, and also to kind of build up a false bottom, like if you need a gap in between. Some other stuff that I didn't feel like dragging over to the table. Where lava rock, I got a nice bag of lava rock. It was very inexpensive for a big bag of that. Also picked up a bag of pool filter sand, which I've used a lot in a lot of different projects and stuff. And I use that as a component in the tropical mix. Zip ties are another thing. They're super handy for building things like this. GE Silicone 1. That's an animal safe silicone that you can use in aquariums or in terrariums. I actually bought an aquarium safe black silicone also. That's another thing that I picked up online also because it was just easier to find that way. Another thing that's going to be kind of essential to you is rocks to use for a false bottom. You can use gravel. There's all kinds of pea gravel is really inexpensive. Possibly use lava rock for some of that too. But it's definitely going to be important to have something to use as a drainage layer in your terrariums. Now for my terrariums, I want them to be bioactive, so I purchased some Springtails. I'm not sure I'll be using them in the first project, but I wanted to go ahead and get them for a couple of reasons. One, when I was up there in the mountains looking around, down below the state park, there are a bunch of places to kind of pull off the road and kind of hike and stuff like that. And I took a couple of trips into the woods, and I came back with some plants and some moss. I decided to try to propagate plants and moss to kind of prepare. There's all kinds of moss and plants and things around the house, but it was really fun to kind of go around the woods and look for really small vines and different kinds of different elements and stuff to try to bring home. I got home and I realized I didn't really have appropriate containers, so I started with these two. And so what I think I'm going to do is after I pull these out to use them maybe for my first project, I'm going to make a bigger propagation chamber for plants and mosses and stuff. And I'm probably going to use these smaller containers as springtail incubators to make more springtails. Yeah, so the springtails came in 2 little cups. I added them to my my little propagation chambers to kind of go ahead and make sure mold and things didn't develop in there and get them bioactive. For now, I've got them in this little container, and this will probably be good enough. I'm not sure I'm going to be using them in my first project, but I definitely want to get a culture of them started and get them going for the next project. Because I did a little hike out in the woods and gathered some samples and stuff, I had to go ahead and mix up some tropical mix. This is a mix of sphagnum moss, that orchid bark, sand, and the soil, all mixed together. And basically these propagation chambers here are really small versions of terrariums that we'll be building later. It's probably easiest to see in this. I used some white gravel that I really hate to be the false bottom for this. And then of course we use the mesh to be another layer. I used some activated carbon as another layer. Something else I probably need to pick up is some lump charcoal or something, or a cheaper alternative for the carbon. But it just so happened I have a lot of it sitting around because I don't tend to use it for my aquariums. I've gotten it a lot over the years, either through things I've purchased or through my aquarium box and a lot of other sources. So I've got a little bit to get me started, and I did end up using that for the initial culture here of the Springtails. But I think lump charcoal is the cheaper alternative to that, and will probably be something I pick up as I move forward. Decoration-wise, I found some slate that I really liked, and I've busted it up into a bunch of really small pieces. I literally took a hammer to slate and busted it up to all these little shards that I can kind of build into maybe some interesting water feature. But for most of these projects and stuff, having a nice collection of rocks and wood is definitely useful. So if you watch my videos for a long time, you'll know that my local fish store, typically, I don't think they're doing it this year, but typically they'd have a customer appreciation day where you can come in and buy a bunch of things on sale. And I picked up this little garden aquarium, they call it. It's a little 12-inch garden aquarium. It's a little under 1.5 gallon capacity of water. I'm not sure how easy it is to see from here, but the front of it ends about right here, and then this is all open up to the top. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start small, and I'm going to make a small kind of indoor pond paludarium out of this. I think this will probably be too small to really put any critters in. I'm not sure that it's going to be. I'm probably going to mostly use moss on here. I'm not sure if it'll be appropriate for use with really any plants or anything. I'm a little nervous about how open it is. I bought this because I thought I liked the idea of like it just be like being able to reach right in there and touch it if you wanted. But I hate the idea of all of it evaporating and it become really difficult to keep. So I've literally had this on the shelf for a couple of years, looking for an excuse to do it, and I think this is the time. My original plan for this week was to get this done, but I've just been so preoccupied with all the other things going on, and I'm still trying to get my garage together. It's really clean right now, but I want to reorganize things. I want to make some more room in my room upstairs for these paludariums or terrariums and things that I'd like to build. I'd like to make an area just to display those. So I've had to keep rearranging and doing some things. Hopefully I can have this ready to show next week. I've also got a big aquarium project that I want to work on next week. So there's a bunch of stuff coming up to show you guys. Now I know this was a little bit off the beaten path for me. This is a little bit different, but like I said, I'm probably going to do everything differently with these videos. It's going to be a different style, a different technique. And I did want another video to kind of point back to and say, hey, if you want to know more about materials that I use, refer back to this video. Alright, so I'm going to call it for now, but I'll be back soon with another video. Hopefully I'll have this thing done by next week. If not, we'll think of something else to talk about. But until I see you again, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank or terrarium. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.